I'm Dave Boyt. Welcome back to the Potter Shop Hollow Tree Farm and Portable Sawmill. It's 4th of January 2021. Crisp, cool day. It's a great day to be outside making some lumber. So in this video, we're going to be talking about log management. How to persuade a log that might weigh 10 times as much as you do to go where you want it to go, including uphill, stay put once it gets there, and how to do it safely. That's the most important thing. We're going to be talking about how to use levers and pulleys, inclined planes, wedges, all of the simple machines that you learned about or should have learned about in school, and put them to good use. The main thing is you got to think like a log, and you have to work with it. I tell people I've never been beaten by a log yet, which is true, but I'm smarter than most of them. Well, not everyone would agree with that, but that's my opinion. So let's get started. Now, speaking of simple machines, lever's going to be your friend. Now this is a peavey, and there's a bit of a debate between peaveys and cant hooks. Cant hooks have a cleat on the end. I always thought they gave you a little bit better bite into the wood than the peavey does, but now that I've used it, they seem to work about the same. People really like them because that point is useful for getting frozen logs broken loose. So they've got that, but to me the biggest thing is that when you're not using it, you can just spike it into the ground, and the next time you need it, it's right there. It's easy to see. You can pick it up without bending it over, and you're ready to go. This has a 5-foot handle to it, so that gives you about a 10-to-1 mechanical advantage for turning logs. And believe me, on some logs, you are going to need every bit of that. So keep that in mind, whichever you use. Get a good one, and you won't regret it. Got a tractor heavy enough to pick up your log, you got it made. I just can't imagine getting along without it. Logs obey the laws of physics, especially gravity, in some unexpected ways, and they don't care who or what is in their way. It's hard to see the cross bunks from the tractor, so spiking the peavey in the ground where you want the end of the log makes a good reference point. Alright, this technique gives me one last chance to make a check, make sure my log stops are up, make sure my forks are where I want them. And now, even with the tractor off, of course, we can let gravity work from here. There we go. So it's real nice and easy. I'm not going to damage the sawmill this way. And should at this point be ready to roll her right on. Nice and easy. I'll leave the tractor in place for right now, just as a safety. I don't want that log moving while I'm clamping. I like to have the clamp about a third of the way up the log. It chocks it as much as anything, but that's the most secure way. And you can see, anytime I try to move that log, I'm basically trying to move the entire sawmill. So that is rock steady, it's clamped in place. Now I'm ready to move the tractor back and move on to my next step. Another way of setting the log on the mill that works great, put a grapple on it and lift it. That way you can have it above the mill, positioned exactly where you want it. Set it straight down and you're set to go. This is Norwood's log grapple because it has a much more positive bite onto the log. This log is exactly where I want it, but I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how to adjust it easily using the grapple. And I'm going to go forward just a little bit. I'm still this side of the center of gravity. I want the light end to lift so that it clears the cross bunk. The heavier end will slide across, but there'll be very little weight on it, so that won't be a problem. Now if I lift it straight up, the whole log will just slide over. It'll go right where it needs to go. If you've got the equipment to do it, use it. Well, that's great if you have the horsepower, but you can make do if you're willing to put a little muscle into it. So the Norwood tow rollers work with a hydraulic, and that's going to be a whole lot easier, which is great because roll it over than to try and drag it across these cross bunks. Let's see if we can move it a little. You see, it really swells out here on the end where it was close to the ground, buttressed. So I've got that hanging way over this last cross bunk so that it's got a place to go and I don't have to lift the other end up quite so high to level the log. So what do you do if the log is flat on the ground and there's no way to get the rope to pass underneath it? You can just take the rope, lay it right alongside, the log like that, have the lead out where you want it to be. Then all you need to do, just roll that log over the rope. Always wear steel-toed boots around the sawmill. Besides, now you've got this rope on the back side of the log, you can tie it off and do whatever you need to do to move the log where you want it. So every time that log rolls, the big end travels further than the small end, and the log's going to try and swing around. So we need to anticipate that. So the idea is going to be to angle the log just enough that when the big end rolls further than the small end, by the time it gets up to the mill, it's going to be square. Let's see if we can make that happen. This is just about the perfect chock for turning a log against because it'll roll against it without trying to climb up and over it. So there's one in every mill yard. So here's a trick that I learned that works surprisingly well, and it really amazes people when they see it. Try and figure out where the center of gravity is on the log. So it's going to be a little closer to the heavier end. And I've just got a short 4x4. I'm going to set down there and just a block of wood to put in front of it just to kind of make it a step up. Easier to get it on this block of wood. I did a pretty good job of finding the center of gravity on this. And this is how easy it is to adjust the angle. So I'll get it about where I think I want it to be. And I'm adjusting for the heavy end to swing around. I'm ready to roll it right up to the ramps. Another point I ought to make right now before I bring the log up is preparation, and thinking ahead is key in working with these logs. So I've got some 4x4 by about 8 foot long runners for a small deck. I'll roll the log up on that. That way, when I need to get the log up on the mill, I can get the rope under it and use that as a pulley. Got it about lined up, but I'm too far down the track. So what I'm going to do is to roll it back, aimed towards the front of the track, then swing it back around and try again. What I'm going to try and do is scoot it over about 2 feet. So again, I'm going to chalk the side that I don't want to roll. And bring it around. Got to get it. Now, chalk this end, roll the heavy end around. Now I'm going to go a little further, angle the log. Now I can bring the small end back around where I want it. This puts that log just exactly where I want it now. And it is going to try to roll around some as I roll it up, so I'm going to have to take that into account. But for now, we're in pretty good shape. So this is an ancient technique known as parbuckling. And what it involves is anchoring one end of the rope to a stationary object. In this case, I'm using the frame of the sawmill, which I hope will remain stationary. The rope then goes under the log and back over the top. The way this works, that's why I wanted the log up on those 4x4s, so I can run that rope under it up onto the sawmill. It acts as a compound pulley, which doubles your mechanical advantage. If you ran the rope the other way, it's going to try to spin the log the other direction, and you're going to be fighting it. The other thing is on your ramp. The Norwood ramps have a series of ridges on them, and that gives just enough bite to keep the log from trying to slide, so it won't go cockeyed on you while you're pulling it. Even at that, you want to get as close to the center of gravity on the log as you possibly can. So I'm about a foot towards the heavy end off the center. So I've got the rope anchored to the sawmill, and I'll go get my pulling machine. I could tell that it was coming up at too much of an angle and needed to be adjusted. And the temptation is with the log, 3/4 of the way up the ramp, kind of horse it around. Yes, or dog it around. It can put you at a real risk, especially if you get behind the log with the can hook. So what I've done, you just back it back down. It's easier this way and safer both. Because the log's closer to the ground And you can use the ground as a fulcrum for leverage to bring that log where it needs to be. And you always want to leave the rope attached as a safety while you finish getting that log in place and clamped down. Sawyer Brian Shelswell is demonstrating Norwood's log loading system to power buckle logs up onto an HD 36 sawmill. The hand crank winch provides the torque to lift heavy logs onto the mill without any additional equipment. Well, the first log was a piece of cake. This one's going to be a little different story. It'll have its challenges, partly because of its size and partly because it's got some defect in it that we're going to have to clean up. Well, when you're buying a log, it's defect. When you're selling it, or selling the lumber, this is character. Always remember that. But we still have to trim up some of this character to get that log to roll fairly straight when we try to get it on the mill and not cause us any more problems than necessary while we're cutting it. Well, I managed to get this bad boy up on the runners, just rolling it with the tractor basically. It's heavier than the tractor could lift. And I'm just going to roll it on up to the ramps, and instead of using that little four-wheeler, I'm going to use a little more horsepower to get this, just to make sure that I do it the first time and do it safely. All right. It'll roll a little bit easier if I get rid of some of that bark. And I found the best tool for that is the claw of a framing hammer. Much better than a hatchet, because it lets you dig in and pull out. There. I think that'll roll around okay. Okay, so part of the trick to this, again, you want to work pretty close to the center of gravity of the log so it's not trying to move one way or the other on you. And you can get these hooks from Norwood. Basically, it's just a cant hook. Go under the log and then lift from the back side. So as a final check, especially on the bigger logs, sight down that track, make sure that there's plenty of clearance for the saw head and the frame. So you can see we're going to clear just fine on both sides of the log. And trust me, the last thing you want to do is to get that saw head just almost to the end of the log. You get bound up, you have to pull it back, get in with a chainsaw and trim it. And it's not necessary if you plan ahead. My good friend Greg Rose with Rose Forestry in Holland, New York, specializes in milling slabs. Here's how he uses the Norwood winch turning system to flip the log over.
Okay, so now that I have sawn through more than half of this log, I am beyond my widest point of live edge sawing. About 1/3 left right now. I'm going to use Norwood's patented winch system to turn this log 180 degrees so I can finish live edge sawing through. Now that I've gotten through my widest point, once this log is flipped, I'll be able to lock it down properly, because we're dealing with a little less weight here now. We'll want things locked down. So before I put the winch in and flip this log over 180 degrees, I'm going to bring up my locking dogs. I'm going to put my pins in the hole, set these as a safety catch, so that way once this log rolls, it does not let gravity take it down and off of the mill. So just a safety precaution here. Okay. So I've now got my dogs flipped over for the wheels. To turn this, I still only have them fairly low, because when the log hits these, the lower these are, the less speed it's going to take up and run that way. So when you're turning a big log like this, there's quite a bit of weight distribution. Install the winch crane. Going to run our cable. Pull that out. Okay. We've got this hook that Norwood supplied with our winch specifically for turning the logs. Hook goes onto the end of the cable. And we'll set the hook towards the outside. We'll start to tighten down. Once we have a bite, you want to make sure this hook bites. You can start your rotation as you center your cable, and this is how easy it is. It's so easy, I can smile while turning this log and not grunt. When I'm sawing a large diameter 30 to 36 inch log down into nominal lumber to square up your log, you have to make 90-degree turns, and this system here might take you a little longer than doing it with a PV, but the accuracy here, I can give it one click to level that log. I can back it off if I went too far. Very easy operations if everything is set up smoothly. So as you can see now, the bark here is starting to get close to my winch once I'm turning this. If this receiver was all the way in, I'd be at a stop here. I'd be bound up. So to keep in mind when flipping these big logs is to keep that winch slot out. So now I'm almost to the tipping point. Give it a few extra cranks. Alright, so now the log's going to go, but now the cable's still holding it. That's a very important point. You can almost pull it over on yourself if you go too far too fast. So you want that log to start going back on its own, and then you can release your winch and you can let it go down on its own. There we go. And now we'll lock that log down. Set my crane off to the side. Now we have Norwood's dog system all up, standing up right now. The great thing about these, they can be adjusted up and down and in and out. This log we're going to want to position so we'll finish all of our cuts in one spot. So get that pulled out. Okay. We're going to give those one click because we're going to leave a 2-inch slab at the end. So right now that dog is set to finish cutting the log. Right now we could have a problem here. So now that that dog is set, I can push this one in to give us the clearance. And since this dog is out, piece of cake, boom, adjusted. And we'll drop our locking dogs. There we go. Now we're ready, solid, they have clearance. And we have our clearance. Yep. There we go. So we should get 3 good slabs still out of the rest of this. 3 good 2-inch, 2¼ inch slabs.
If you don't have a tractor or a winch, a farm jack and a little ingenuity and muscle gets the job done, even on a heavy one. And I've put a stump here in place to hold that jack up so I can get a little bit more lift. So I'm going to combine this with the idea that we had before of wrapping the rope around it with the hook, and we're going to let down that rope. And you can see we got quite a bit of travel, and if we need to, we can chalk it, drop the jack back down, get another bite. I think we're starting to turn. Yeah, we're starting to turn. Very little effort. I've got a chalk that I've made that has a T-track that fits right on top of the cross bunk. I can slide that in so that when I release the pressure to get my next bite, the log won't try to roll back on me too far. There we go. Alright, here's our next bite. And we'll see if we can run it around a little further. The base of the jack is pushing against the side of the sawmill track, so that's keeping it from kicking up. That's real important. You'll reach a tipping point. Yeah, there we go. We'll see. And then everything just falls into place. There she goes. Piece of cake. So, probably still 1,000 pounds of log there. And no tractor, just a little bit of muscle power and mechanical advantage from the farm jack. We'll get her pushed in place and finish slabbing her out. Well, so far it's been a real wrestling match. I'm about halfway through milling the log. This is what it's all about right here. I told you Sweet Gum was a pretty log with a lot of character to it. But you look at the shapes, the grain, the pattern, the colors. Now just imagine 2 of these book matched side by side to make a nice dining room table, countertop, bar top, whatever. And you can turn this into a $5,000 piece of furniture. The tree, by the way, I forgot to mention this, I got from a tree service. So this was cut down out of a residential area, and this is just a real good way of recycling a resource that would otherwise be left to rot, cut for firewood, or even go through a grinder and turned into mulch, if you can imagine that. And I am so pleased that I can be a part of the link between what's inside that tree and what its potential is, and the final piece of furniture as it comes out of a woodworker's shop. So you can decide whether or not it's all worthwhile. I can tell you it sure is to me. Well, there ain't nothing to it. All a fella needs is a few brains and enough muscle to hold him up off the ground. There's a lot of ways of handling logs, and I've shown you in this video a few of the tricks that I've learned along the way, and hopefully they'll be of some use to you. The main thing is to do it safely. Keep in mind ways that log could try to hurt you if you're not paying attention. And if you've got help working with you, you got to watch out for them too. I've cut jobs where the customer wanted to help them. That's fine, but some of them just don't seem to have any sense about where to stand or how to work in a safe way. And more than once, I've had to tell them, go back to the truck and watch from there. I just can't take that risk. And there's nothing wrong with doing what it takes to keep everybody safe. But anyway, thanks for stopping by and watching this video. I enjoy making them, and I hope they do you some good as well. Everybody's got their own way of doing things, and I'd love to hear some of the solutions that you've come up with in working with the logs, or sawmilling in general for that matter. So you can leave a reply to this YouTube video, and I try to get back to most of them when I can. And we can all learn from each other a little bit. So, until we meet again, be careful, be safe, enjoy what you're doing, and keep making sawdust. Well, here's another thing that you can do with a peavey that you can't do with a cant hook.